The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome friends. This is the first lecture and we will start with a small training session because some of you are new in this batch. Can we all, while other members they come, can we just start introducing ourselves? Dr. Kala Kandaswamy, can you unmute yourself? You will see a red button in front of you, or there is a panel on one side. Hello. Hi. Hi. हाँ. मैंने नहीं करा. I don't know. मैं तो webinar चल रहा है. Dr. Kala, can you introduce yourself? Hello. This way we will be checking your equipment also.
Hello.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Is it audible, sir?
Yes, very well.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, this is Dr. Kala.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm from Chennai. I'm working as a consultant pathologist in a private hospital.
Okay. So,
Hello.
yes, yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
There is a raise your hands button. Can you see? All of you, please raise your hands. Can you see a raise your hands button? Yes. Dr. Kala has raised it. Dr. Priyanka has also raised. Dr. Preeti Nanda, you are. Yes, Dr. Hani Sharma has also raised. Parsha Singh has raised. Preeti Sabharwal has raised. So, whenever you have to ask a question, you have to raise your hands. So, meanwhile, Hani Sharma, can you unmute yourself? Yes, please introduce yourself.
Hello, are you able to hear me? Hello?
Very well, very well.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Hani. Yes, I'm Dr. Hani Bhaskar Sharma. I'm currently placed as Associate Professor in a medical college in Lucknow.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Right.
Parshav Singh.
Thank you so much.
Can you unmute yourself? Dr. Parshav Singh. After you have spoken, please self-mute yourself. Dr. Kala and Dr. Hani. After that, Dr. Preeti Sabharwal. Yes.
Hello, sir. This is Dr. Preeti Sabharwal from Bhubaneswar, sir. So I'm a consultant pathologist in Capital Hospital, Bhubaneswar.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Parshav Singh. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello everyone. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Pal Singh. I am currently I have recently joined as Senior Research Fellow in Flow Cytometry Lab, Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai.
Okay. Welcome. Preeti Nanda Mishra. Can you unmute yourself? Yes. Preeti Nanda, can you introduce yourself? Hello? हाँ जी. Well, friends, Dr. Sambit is almost here. He's joining in 2 minutes. Hello?
Hi.
हाँ.
Hi, Dr. Bedi.
Yes, I just Everybody is online, and I just took a brief introduction while you were joining. We have
Yeah, sure.
so
So we have 10 people today
yes,
in the webinar.
so far.
Total of 10.
Yes,
So far 10, but there are many registered, right?
yes, 35.
Because it's very important. We are going to talk about the lymphoid tissue, lymphoid organs, and lymph node in general. It's kind of boring, but everybody needs to know about normal lymph node before jumping into a lymphoma diagnosis. So more would be better. So should we wait for some time for others to join, or I can start?
I think we can start.
Let's have a short introduction. Who all are here? Like,
Yes, we just
is anyone new?
I think we can have a quick introduction once again. Priyanka, can you start? Can we start with you?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Hello everyone, I am Dr. Priyanka Chadha. I am from Delhi. I am working as an associate consultant in Action Cancer Hospital in New Delhi.
Action Biology.
Yeah, the cancer hospital there.
Okay, so you're working with Naveen.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Okay, great.
Dr. Preeti Nanda Mishra. Dr. Preeti Nanda, can you hear me? Can you speak?
We'll probably have to unmute her.
I have unmuted her, but there's some she's having some problems. Parshav Singh, can you introduce yourself once again? Parshav, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, you're audible.
Hello. Okay. Hello everyone. I am Dr. Parth Singh. I've joined recently as senior research fellow in the Department of Hematopathology, TMH Mumbai, in flow cytometry lab.
Cool. So you're with Sumit's group, Sumit and Mani's group.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. They're very dear friends of mine. Cool.
Okay.
Yes.
Nishtha Batra, she is a very
Nista is with us for a long time, right? For breast, GYN, and GU.
yes. Nishtha, can you introduce yourself to others?
Good evening, everyone. Yes, sir. I'm Dr. Nishtha. I'm a practicing pathologist specialist in histopathology from Manipal Hospital.
Okay. Dr. Honey, can you
There's some problem with the microphone. I think things are not audible, or what is? I mean, am I audible to everyone?
perfect?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Very well audible. So, I think Ifat is also joining.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Hani Bhaskar from Lucknow. I am presently working as an associate professor in a medical college here in Lucknow.
Great. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Right.
Dr. Kala. Yes, Dr. Kala.
Hello, is it audible, sir? Hello.
Yes.
It is
Yeah.
audible.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Kala from Chennai. I'm working as a consultant pathologist in Dr. Kamakshi Memorial Hospital, sir.
Welcome.
So, yes, Ifat Jamal has also joined. Ifat, can you introduce yourself? Ifat, can you unmute yourself? Yes.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Ifat from Patna.
She is from a very prestigious AIMS and also associated with us for almost now, how many years? 3 years or 4 years?
Yes, sir. It has been a privilege.
Yeah, I mean, Ifat is a very active participant for all the webinars.
Yes.
Ifat, Nista, Anirudhan, Mayur, and Kavita. They are the 5 people that they keep me read something. Otherwise, I cannot take the webinar. I will answer them. And Preeti is also from AIMS, Preeti Nanda, who actually sees the second. She is a very dynamic senior pathologist at AIMS, one of the associate professor at Bhubaneswar AIMS.
Yes, she's also
I think
here.
she could not introduce her.
He's also here. Please,
Yeah, she's also here.
introduce yourself.
She is one of the specialists in lymphoma. Yeah.
Okay. And Radhika Nandwani.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sir, I'm Dr. Radhika from Jabalpur.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. Welcome to the webinar. I mean,
Thank
hopefully
you,
you
sir.
will gain something, and I would be getting more because by interacting with people across the country, it's a privilege and it's like an opportunity to learn from each other.
Yes. So I think we can. People are.
Yeah, we can start.
Normally,
We have the other speakers today, Dr. Allahabad, Dr. Kumar, and Dr.
I had sent Dr. Nita. I had talked to Dr. I asked Dr. Nita. She was online about 2 minutes back, but she's not. I'll just see.
Yeah. So I think I can start now, and just should I start, Dr. Bedi?
Yes, please do.
Okay, cool. So good evening, everyone. So this will be more, I would like to make it more informal and interactive rather than like a classroom didactic lecture where I'll just keep on talking and everybody will be listening. So it's very easy to like attentive and keep up with the attention span, and when one person is just speaking and the other people are listening. So we'd make it more interactive, and please stop me if you have a question in between, and I'll go slowly. Today is a very more of an anatomy, histology, and embryology topic. It's boring, but the talk I'm going to give you today is going to be useful, and I'll be repeating throughout the lectures. Dr. Nita said she's online and she's listening to us.
Okay, but
so yeah. So let's start.
Yes, she's there now. She's there.
Yeah. She's an expert in the lymph nodes, and she's a cytologist. So Dr. Kumar has a lot of years of experience in immense years, almost 3 decades of experience in lymph node cytology. We'll be talking. So I'll be focusing more on general lymph node or the lymphatic systems. So we talk in the first few slides about lymphatic system, what is lymphatics, and lymph nodes. So what are the lymphatic system? If you see here, so you have some tree-like structures, which are the small collapsible vessels, which are not visible, which drain the tissue fluid of the lymph. and they finally go into the thoracic duct, and from the thoracic duct to the vena cava, and finally into the right heart. Lymphatics do not go to the left heart. It is a draining system like venous system. It is not a supplying system. So that is the basic thing we need to know. Lymphatic drain tissue fluid. They do not supply to a organ. So this is very much like a venous system. Veins, they carry deoxygenated blood. They have red-blue blood, whereas the lymphatics are the clear fluid, or the white fluid. So that is the only difference. They both are collapsible. Veins are visible, lymphatics are usually not visible. And they drain into the vena cava and the right heart, except for the pulmonary vein, which is a different story altogether. So that is the basic thing. So other components, so we have the lymphatic vessels, other trees, and they drain into the lymphoid tissues, which can be primary lymphoid tissues and the secondary one. I just want to say what are the primary ones. They're the bone marrow and the thymus, and the secondary ones are the tonsils, spleen, and the lymph node. So lymph node is not a primary lymphatic organ. It is a secondary lymphatic organ. And the other lymphoid organs are the mucosa-associated lymphoid tissues, which are located along the gastrointestinal tract, the GI tract, and in the bronchial epithelium, salivary gland. The salt, malt, and bolt. Bronchus, mucosa of the GI tract, and salivary associated tissues. And we also have lymphoid tissues commonly present in the prostate and in the urinary bladder. So those are also mucosa associated and the gland associated lymphoid tissues. So they're everywhere in the body. Presence of lymphoid tissue doesn't make it a chronic inflammation normally, unless they're destroying or evoking some tissue response. So they travel along the veins. If you see here, they're not really traveling parallel to the arteries. They're going parallel to the veins. This is a vein and this is a lymphatic. They're going parallel to each other. Arteries all over here. And they're draining into the vein, the superior vena cava, and finally into the right atrium. So what are the principal structures? They start from lymphatic capillaries. So if you see here, this is the capillary. This is these are the big vessels. They divide into smaller vessels, medium size, small size vessels, then into arterioles. Arterioles finally break down into capillaries. So every capillary has an arteriolar end and a venular end. So this is the venular end of the capillary and this is the arteriolar end of the capillary. So what happens? The arteriolar end of capillary has a high hydrostatic pressure, which is about 35, whereas the venular end of the capillary has a low hydrostatic pressure, which is about 25. So what happens? Because of the high hydrostatic pressure, the fluid they get out of the capillary into the tissue spaces, which is basically the pathogenesis of edema. When there is low colloidal oncotic pressure, the osmotic pressure because of low albumin, or increase in the hydrostatic pressure, we have edema. General pathology in Robbins. So what is happening here? The fluid is coming out of the capillary outside. So there is excessive fluid. In the normal circumstances, the lymphatic capillaries, they drain those fluid. They bring those fluid into the big lymphatic collecting vessels, to the lymph trunks, which are these saculations, then finally to the thoracic duct. And that happens all over the body, from the upper part and the lower part, and they all get into the vena cava. Is it clear so far? What is the normal function of lymph? Any questions so far?
No.
Yeah. So if I ask you a question, the lymph comes out of the arteriolar end of the capillary or the venular end of the capillary? Majority. It comes from both.
Venular.
Venular or arteriolar. Where is the hydrostatic pressure is more in the arteriolar end, and hydrostatic pressure is low on the venular end.
Venular end.
So actually, the capillary has an arteriolar end. Yeah, this is the irony. Though the arteriolar end has a, so what happens? The majority of the lymph is by the arteriolar end of the capillary, and minority is by the venular end of the capillary. But what happens, a lot of it is get absorbed by the tissue spaces. So what lymph we get, suppose there is a tumor sitting in the breast, and the tumor is getting drained into the artery or the vein. It is getting drained into the artery. The blood is going to supply the tumor cell to grow. The tumor is going to invade. When you say lymphovascular invasion, we look into the invasion into the artery or into the vein. So in the CAP protocol, for every organ system, we have LVI, lymphovascular invasion. So which vessel you look into? Capillary, arteries or the veins? These are very conceptual questions. When you look into the periphery of the tumor, away from the tumor, you look into artery or the vein. When you say lymphovascular invasion, LVI is a component of every organ system reporting, and it's an important. When you say LVI, basically the tumor is into the bloodstream. So, when we say it is LVI, we look into lymphatics, artery or vein, or all three.
Look for the arteries.
Not
Vein and lymphatics.
Exactly. So let me clarify one thing. Suppose there's a mass in the breast. So that mass has to grow. How the mass has to grow? The mass will get some blood supply by the native vessels, which are the internal mammary artery and the branches. And the mass is also try to ramify the vessels by producing a lot of vascular endothelial growth factors. So it is new angiogenesis in addition to already established angiogenesis native to that organ. So artery is basically supplying blood or nourishment or oxygen to the tumor cell to grow. Whereas the tumor cells are drained into, or they're trying to spread throughout the body. The tumor cells, they want to get out of the epithelial mesenchymal interface. They produce a lot of hyaluronic acid, collagenase, metalloproteinases. They break the barrier, then they get into the veins. And from the vein, so how they're going to get into the vein? Through the capillary network, from the arteriole to the capillary network and then to the vein. So while going to the vein, some of these cells, because of the high hydrostatic pressure of the arteriolar end of the capillary, they get into the tissue space where they are either present as nodules of tumor in the parenchyma, or they get inside the capillaries. And when they are inside the capillaries, inside the lymphatic capillaries, so you see lymphatic invasion or invasion into the veins. So there is the arterioles are never on the capillaries. They are never the areas where you look for lymphovascular invasion. You look into the venules and lymphatics. Is it clear now? Is it clear? Which area we should look for? Because see, if I start talking about lymph node capsule, afferent lymphatic, efferent lymphatic, that don't make any sense unless you know the dynamics of the entire human body.
Right.
Yeah. So I try to make it very simplified. So, like for the vein, the bigger veins are superior and the inferior vena cava. The bigger arteries are the aorta and the pulmonary trunk, and the largest lymphatic is thoracic duct. So, and to summarize everything, veins and the lymphatics are brothers. They have no relation to the artery, because arteries are the supplying end, these are the draining end. Artery is the bank, and these are taking loans from the bank, and they're spreading the stuff all over the body. When you say we have circulating tumor cells, we are basically looking at the circulating tumor cell majority of the time in the veins or in the lymphatics, not in the arteries. And arteries are not that. Arteries are supplying. Arteries are supplying blood, except when you are looking for EGFR in the pulmonary. The pulmonary lung tumors. Then you look into the pulmonary veins, which is kind of oxygenated. So that is the basic difference. Just to recap the pre-medical stuff. Then, what is the difference between lymphatics and the other distance? So they are blind-ended vessels usually. They are permeable to proteins, unlike the veins and the arteries. And they are even permeable to the cells. So the cancer cells can get out of the lymphatics to the extracellular space or the extravascular space. They contain lymph, which is a clear fluid, and the endothelium which lines the lymphatics, they have fenestration, or they have a lot of big gap junctions between the endothelium. So the fluid, they get in and get out. So can someone tell me what are the markers which are positive in the lymphatic endothelium? What are the different immunohistological markers for lymphatic endothelium? Are they same as vascular endothelium, or they're different?
Different. D240.
So see, immunohistochemically they are similar. Immunohistochemically you see similar kind of positivity for CD31, CD34, D240. Then what are the other markers? These are the D240, CD31, CD34 are the cytoplasmic and membranous markers. But what are the nuclear markers for endothelium? Fly1. Then ERG is a nuclear marker. Fly1 is a nuclear marker. Fly1, and what else? Cyclin D1. Normal endothelium is positive for cyclin D1. When you have we are suspecting the mantle cell lymphoma, cyclin D1. We look into the.
There's some noise in the background.
Yeah, I'm also hearing the echo.
Hello?
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 Hello? Yeah, now my voice.
Yeah.
Okay. So the nuclear strains are Fly1, ERG, cyclin D1. What else is a nuclear strain for endothelium? Anyone from the crowd? I mean. So which people use for synovial sarcoma? They use that stain for diagnosing synovial sarcoma, at least as a supportive marker.
TLE1 is.
Yes, very good. TLE1. TLE1 is another vascular endothelial marker. Okay. So what is the main function? It collects excess of large particles of the tissue fluid in the extracellular intervascular spaces in the capillary bed. So, and in the GI tract, the digested fat, get absorbed into the racteals, which are the specialized lymphatic capillaries along the GI tract, in the form of chylomicron. And the limbs, they're driven by rhythmic contraction by the lymphatic valves and the little musculature on the wall of the lymphatics. And to prevent the backflow like veins, they have the lymphatic valves. And they finally drained into the thoracic duct alongside the aorta in the vena cava. The blockage of the lymphatic drainage leads to lymphedema, or the swelling of the tissue. It is because of the pressure by the tumor, parasites blocking it, surgery, or if you take out the axilla along with the mastectomy or a lumpectomy for breast cancer, so the lymphatic drainage to the axilla is difficult in the upper arm and the axilla and the chest wall. So there will be a lot of lymphedema involving the lateral part of the chest wall and the upper arm. And the same thing happens in the inguinal dissection in the leg. Elephantiasis by filarial worm blocking the parasites, blocking the lymphatics. Then the role of lymphatics in metastasis we already discussed, into the vein, never into the artery. Artery supply lymphatics and the veins the drain. And the lymphatic system, so we have the lymphatic vessels is covered, and the lymphoid tissues are the lymphoid organs. So what are the lymphoid tissues? Am I audible to everyone? Why there's so much of noise? Am I audible to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So what are the lymphoid tissues that diffusely present throughout the body in every organ system and outside the organ? Outside the organ, they are the lymph nodes, tonsils, bone marrow, thymus, and the spleen. And inside the organ, they are the mucosa or the organ-associated lymphoid tissue. And germinal centers. Germinal centers is not very native to the lymph nodes. Wherever you see a lot of B lymphocyte proliferation in response to antigen, you see a reactive tail area, which is called the germinal centers. One thing I just want to emphasize, suppose in a GI tract biopsy, you see a nodule of lymphoid cell in the gastric biopsy. Just do not outrightly say they are lymphoid follicles. To call something as follicle, you need a pale center containing larger cells, some macrophages, and a rim of blue cells, which are smaller as compared to the center cells. So you have a pale center and the dark periphery to call it a lymphoid follicle. Do not use the word follicular gastritis if you see just a quiescent, which is a naive, quiescent, non-reactive nodule of blue cells. I would not say primary follicle. I would refrain myself. I use the word primary follicle and I would restrict myself to only a lymph node. If you see a germinal, you see lymphoid aggregates, a lymphoid nodule. So when I have a case of like a GI biopsy, antral biopsy, I say that the gastric antral biopsy has moderate increase in the lymphoplasmacytic cells in the lamina propria with the formation of I would not use the word lymphoid follicle. You need to call something as lymphoid follicle when there is a germinal center visible to you. You have to be very specific. Then macrophages are basically cells of the mononuclear system. They are also among the lymphoid tissues and the nurture the lymphoid. There's so much of disturbance.
Yeah, too much.
Yeah, too much actually. I am hearing the echo of my voice.
But at my end, it's perfect. Why is it?
I can hear you all. I mean, my voice is okay for you, Doctor.
Okay, I am muted. Yes, your voice is absolutely fine at my end. I am muting everyone now.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Preeti.
Yes.
So it may be
that is for speaking. Not for listening. That is for speaking, not for listening. There is some problem in your own laptop. Yes.
Now it's okay?
Yes.
Okay, so probably because everybody was muted, so there was a problem. So let's
is the sound better now at your end?
At my end is perfect. I don't hear my own voice. I mean, I used to hear my own voice for the last 5-6 slides, but now it's not.
Okay.
It's better. But what about others? I think it's better. Yeah, Dr. Nita said it's better.
Yes.
Okay, so we have lymphoid tissues and the
I have muted everyone.
Okay, so we are moving on to the lymphoid organs. So the lymphoid organs, the primary ones are the bone marrow and thymus. Secondary, lymph nodes, spleen, and the tonsil. You know the function. They eliminate the abnormal cells and the pathogen. Then the lymph nodes what they have macrophages and lymphocytes to attack the microorganisms. They have afferent lymphatics. There are multiple afferent lymphatics on one efferent lymphatic. The afferent lymphatics they drain into the subcapsular sinuses, and the efferent lymphatics they get out of the lymph node at the hilum to the medullary cord. So I'll go over this picture again and again. So this is not for one time. So swollen lymph nodes are called by what? It may be because there is expansion of the number of lymphocytes. There is lymphadenopathy, generalized, localized, group of lymph node enlarged. That because the enlargement, because the number of lymphocytes per unit area has increased. So that kind of is placed upon the capsule. So and swollen the lymph node. So the lymphocytes could be monoclonal, as in lymphomas, or because the lymph node has been invaded by some other cells. So that is also taking a lot of space, like metastatic carcinoma, other sarcomas, or there is reactive process in response to some bacteria, virus, fungus, rickettsia, chlamydia, so sort of infective agent, or there is some injury that causing lymphadenopathy. And spleen is the site of immune surveillance and response. It removes the debris, foreign bodies, toxins, bacteria, and the blood cells. So spleen, the function for spleen is very specific. It's mainly, it doesn't really get enlarged unless it is involved by some infective pathology or by neoplastic pathology like hemopoietic neoplasm, primary splenic lymphoma. And thymus, it is important in the prenatal age group and in the young adult, in the kids, because the site of maturation of the T lymphocytes is the primary lymphoid organ. The site of maturation for B lymphocyte is bone marrow, where the site of maturation for the T cells is the thymus. It secretes hormones like thymopoietin, and it is critical in the development in the childhood. And you know, it is an anterior mediastinal structure extending to the superior mediastinum, with the fat increases as you grow older and becomes atretic. Tonsils, they trap and destroy the bacteria inside the oropharynx. And I'm just quickly go over this. I'm not taking an immunology lecture, so just to have a hang of it. So different the pathogens can be non-specific, which is the innate immunity which we acquire to our genetic and the constitutional makeup, and it is in general to the external barriers, inflammation and fever. And the specific immune response is by the immunocompetent cells, which are what are the competent cells? The T cells, the B cells, and the mononucleophagocytic system cells. So skin is the external barrier, so I'm not going to go over it. We all know about it. Then the subepithelial areolar tissue, the mucous membrane, they're all for innate immunity. And non-specific immunity for them, they basically evoke inflammation for a group of pathogens and limit their spread. And you know the features of inflammation, what are the chemicals involved. So because the talk is mostly normal lymph nodes, so I'm not going to waste my time talking about it. So what are the specific immunity? There is a typographic error. It's humoral and cellular. Humoral immunity is by the B lymphocytes and driven by the antibody or the immunoglobulins, and the cellular is by T lymphocytes and the NK cell as well, the natural killer cells. And cellular, if you remember, the cancer immunity is mostly cellular immunity, and virus immunity is cellular. Bacteria and fungus is mostly humoral. Fungus can be either a, bacteria is predominantly humoral, except Mycobacterium leprae and the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which are more upper-based. But cancer immunity is T and NK mediated, and virus is T and NK. And all these, they remember three cardinal steps. One is recognizing the pathogen or the foreign substance, attack it, and remember it for a while or for the rest of life as a memory. And antibodies are for the B cells and the white cell structure, you know. Important thing you need to know right now, because I'm going to talk about it later on. We have we have this area. This is the most variable or the hypervariable area of the antibody, which determines antigen specificity or epitope specificity of every antigen. Suppose we have antibody, we have a clone. We say the clone for this EGFR is different from that EGFR. That means the difference is in the antibody structure at the hypervariable region, which is at the terminal part of the short arm and the long arm. So that makes the DACO antibody, or that makes the, suppose we have like 4 clones of PD-L1. How they're different, the clones? Because this is the site where they're different, and they're going to bind differently to the specific epitope which is present in the tissue. So for the humoral immunity, what is the first thing? So first is the immunocompetent B cells, they expose to the antigen for the first time. And the antigen binds to the B cell. They do not go and bind to the B cell directly. Usually they come through MHC class 1 molecule after being engulfed by the macrophages, where the macrophage phagocytose it, process it, and they present it. There are 3 P's involved, a P cube. Phagocytose, process, and present it to the B lymphocyte in association with the class 2 MHC molecule. One question I want to ask here, what are the locations of the class 1 molecules and what are the locations of the class 2 molecule in human body? Before I move on to the next part in the flow diagram or in the cartoon. What are the locations of MHC1 and MHC2 in human body?
Anybody would like to answer?
MHC1 is basically present in all nucleated cell of the body, including platelet. RBC do not have. I'm just making it very specific. RBC doesn't have a nucleus and platelet doesn't have a nucleus either. But platelet do have MHC class 1, but RBC do not have MHC class 1 molecule. Every nucleated cell, they have class 1. But MHC class 2 molecules are present only in the immunocompetent cells. And what are those immunocompetent cells? The T lymphocytes, B lymphocytes, natural killer cells, and the cells of the mononuclear phagocytic system. So what are the cells of the mononuclear phagocytic system? They are the basophils in the peripheral blood or in the bone marrow, mast cells, macrophages, littoral cells of the spleen, reticulum cells of the bone marrow, Langerhans cells of the skin, microglia of the brain, and what else? What I'm forgetting in the mononuclear phagocytic cells? There's some I'm forgetting. Kupffer cells of the liver. So these are the cells where class 2 molecules are present in addition to the class 1. Tumor cells, they express what? 1 or 2? It would be when we talk about PD-L1 and everything in the metastatic carcinoma class in the, so PD-L1, I said a PD-L1, I will talk about it later, but tumor cells do they express class 1 or class 2 molecule or both? Tumor cells, they usually have a nucleus, right? Because the tumor cells, the entire driver for the tumor is DNA, and DNA is present in the nucleus. So they do have nucleus. So it is a nucleated cell. And tumor cells are also immunocompetent because they engulf, they show cell cannibalism by engulfing another tumor cells. But do they have class 2 molecule, or they have only class 1, or they have both? Question. I said all nucleated cells have class 1 and immunocompetent cells have class 2 in addition to class 1. And platelet is enucleated, but it has class 1. RBC doesn't have. This is the summary. The question for the house is, tumor cells, do they contain class 1, class 2, or both?
Pasha Singh, would you like to answer that?
I'm not sure.
Tumor cells, if they, they have class 1, but there are some specific tumor cells. Normally, when the tumor is not very aggressive, it is kind of organ confined or starting to show early metastasis, they have only class 1. So the cells, the immunocompetent cells like the CD8 positive or cytotoxic T cells, they can recognize them in association with class 1 MHC and kill them. But when they become very aggressive, they want to escape the immune mechanism, they start expressing class 2. There are studies showing expression of MHC class 2 molecules in aggressive high-grade tumors when it is difficult to control them in the stage 4 disease. But primarily the tumor cells only express class 1 because they're nucleated cell like any other nucleus in the body, and they are not primarily immunocompetent. The immunocompetency stage, in the beginning part of a tumor, in the tumorigenesis, they are amenable to be affected by the tumor infiltrating lymphocytes, and things can happen properly. But later on, towards the progression of the tumor, they acquire molecules to escape or evade the tumor immunity. So what happens when an antigen comes this process and present to the B lymphocyte, either it directly stimulates the B lymphocyte and B lymphocytes become plasmablast, and from plasmablast you see the plasma cells, and there are some memory B cells, or it can come through a helper T cell pathway where the antigen from the macrophage recognizes the helper T cell in association with class 2 molecule, and that by producing interleukin 2, 4, 6, and 8 stimulates the B cells, and then things further happen. And plasma cells secrete antibodies. So this is the humoral antibody. Then initial is IgM and the secondary one is IgG. Cellular is by cytotoxic T cell, which is CD8, which is otherwise called suppressor T cells. They have different functions, but they both have CD8 molecule on the surface. Helper T cells are CD4. 4 in our body is more than 8, and they're memory T cells. How the same thing, the main thing for T cell is the T cell receptor, and T cell receptor recognizes the macrophage engulfing either a B cell or an antigen, or an antigen is directly stimulating the T cell in association with class 2 MSC molecule, and the T cell receptor which is present on the surface of the, it is a transmembrane receptor on the surface of the T cell. We'll talk about it. So this is a beautiful diagram. Activation of T cell. Again, so the first thing is antigen presentation by the macrophages to the T cell in association with the class 2 MHC molecule and the T cell receptor for a CD8 positive cell, for CD4 positive cell, and for CD8 it is class 1 molecule. When we go into this, let's go to the next one. Yes, and these are the various disorders of the system: hypersensitivity, autoimmunity, and immunodeficiencies. When things are going, if the proper immunity is exaggerated, that is hypersensitivity. When we are attacking our own tissue, it is autoimmunity. When nothing is happening, it is immunodeficiencies. So, yeah. So the lymph node has a capsule, have a cortex, and a medulla. And this is the subcapsular sinus. Again, we'll go over, no rush, we have more slides. And this is the follicle, which is a secondary follicle because it has a pale center, which is a germinal center. This is the mantle zone, and this is the marginal zone. And in the medulla, you have the medullary cords, the pale areas are the medullary sinuses, which are lined by and rich in plasma cells. And the spleen, we have the red pulp, which is the blood at the sinusoids, and the white areas are basically represented by the lymphatic follicles or the lymphoid follicles, and they have an arteriole which is called central arteriole, but that is present eccentrically. That is not present in the central. And so this is a central arteriole which is present in one location in the eccentric position of the white pulp. And these are what? These are the littoral cells which are lining the splenic sinusoid. So we have a disease called littoral cell angioma of the spleen. So you see a lot of these spaces which are lined, containing vessels, and they're lined by littoral cells. And thymus has a pale medulla and a outside cortex which is darker. And the Hassel's corpuscle as the organ involutes, and these are the thymic medullary epithelium. So see, in lymph node and in, you don't see this epithelial cell, but thymus, you have an epithelial component also, which are the thymic epithelial cells. and this is the adult thymus. So let's forget all this. So let's go to your lymph nodes. So what is a lymph node? So lymph node has a capsule which is usually thin and not very thick in a normal lymph node or a non-antigenically exposed lymph node. And the pale outer part, the darker outer part is cortex, and the inside is kind of paler, which is the medulla. And these are the afferent lymphatics, which are multiple, they're thick walled, and these are the efferent lymphatic, and these are the arteries and the veins. The artery supplies the lymph node, and the vein drains the lymph node. And it is divided into multiple lobules by arbitrarily dividing septae, which are these lobules. And this is the capsule and the subcapsular sinuses, which are rich in sinus histiocytes, and these are the follicles. The primary follicles are not reactive because they are not antigenically activated. You see everything which looks blue. Then with activation, they call the secondary follicle, or with the germinal center, which is the tail area. And this is the B cell rich place. So this is predominantly B cell. When they become reactive, you see some sprinkling of T cells in the center. So if you do like a BCL2 staining in the center, you see some kind of positivity because the reactive T cells in the center are also BCL2 positive. But that doesn't mean it's a lymphoma. It is here and there positivity, and CD3 is also going to be positive because the reactive centers are some T cells. And they predominantly they have the centroblast and the central sites, which are the follicular center cells. But the periphery, just periphery to that follicle, the mantle zone, and from outside the mantle is the marginal. Just to make something clear, you know CD20 is positive for B cells. The mantle zone B lymphocyte, the CD5, and the marginal zone B lymphocyte, they neither express CD5 and nor express K. So if you see a tumor, which is a B-cell lymphoma, which is 5 negative and 10 negative, do not think about usually a follicular lymphoma or a lymphoma derived from the mantle zone. It is usually a marginal or lymphoplasmacytic or something atypical, but usually these are highly unlikely in that scenario. Then the medulla is the medullary cord.
Sir,
cannot
the
hear
part
anything.
is not audible.
Do we have to unmute again, Dr. Bedi? Unmute everyone because again the same issue is happening.
I mean, these are local problems, and I mean, where the internet gets slow, the voice will come down. We can't do anything about it. I mean, you have to make sure that your internet connection is okay.
Yeah, mine is okay. I mean, I can hear. Right now it is fine. Then again, we can kind of unmuting anyone.
I mean, anybody who will
unmute anyone.
Write on WhatsApp group also.
Okay, I think Aparna has some issues. She just wrote. 2 people have some issues. Yeah. So what I mean here, I'll come to that follicular organization again. So the follicular center is positive for CD10 and BCL6. They are negative for BCL2. And just next to the follicle, the periphery is the mantle zone, which is positive for CD5, and marginal is negative for 10 volt. Then coming to the embryology of the lymph node, they develop on the lateral mesoderm, which is on both the sides of the embryonic disc. Embryonic disc has an amniotic cavity and the yolk sac, and just at the lateral of that is the lateral mesoderm. And lymphatic sacs, they develop at endothelial outpouching from the central vein.
All of you, please mute yourself.
There are a lot of So lymph nodes, they develop from the lateral plate mesoderm, which are present on either side of the embryonic disc or the embryo, with the central embryonic disc, which is the upper yolk sac and the amniotic cavity. And lymphatic sacs, we have a central vein at the age of at the prenatal life of fifth week, and we have endothelial outgrowth from that, which forms the lymphatic sac. And the lymphatic plexuses that develop from the lymphatic sac, and these plexuses are inverted further by mesenchymal cells. They proliferate and they aggregate laterally to form the lymph nodes. Because if you see, most of the lymph nodes are present towards the periphery or the lateral part of the organ or next to the organ, and they are basically formed by the lymphatic plexuses, which are primarily derived from the lateral part, the mesodermal structure from the mesoderm. And small collections of lymphoblasts are present in the first trimester. By the second trimester, cortex is distinguishable from the medulla, and the primary follicles are present by second trimester in the prenatal life. A secondary lymphoid organ, so B and T cells, primary lymphoid organs like B, bone marrow, and thymus is T. The secondary organs are spleen, lymph nodes, and the Peyer's patches, and the tertiary organs which are present within the organs. Anatomical organization. Lymph nodes are organized in order to detect and inactivate foreign antigens. They're always peripheral. They are like policemen. They're present outside to attack the organisms, and they're present in the lymph in those areas which are exposed to outside, like gastrointestinal tract, skin, and the respiratory epithelium. These are the major organs in contact with the environment. Location. So we have to focus on few things now. Then I'll have pictures for everything. Afferent lymphatics. What is afferent lymphatics? So after this class, I want every one of you go and see the normal lymph nodes which are present, like you have a dissection specimen, like a pelvic dissection or axillary dissection. Take a normal lymph node, you will find out everything. You just don't have to pour immunostains to look into it. So what is afferent lymphatic? They penetrate the capsule, they enter the marginal sinuses. Marginal sinus, which is present basically, this one, they penetrate. This is the subcapsular sinus. They come to the marginal sinus. The marginal sinus is here. And this area is paracortex, which is in between. And this is also paracortex. So paracortex is something like this. The paracortex is interfollicular and corticomedullary. This is the medulla. This is the cortex. So paracortex is something like a sheath, like a half moon or a sheath-shaped structure. And they communicate with the intranodal sinuses. They become the efferent vessels which lack an endothelial lining. Afferent lymphatics, they usually do not have an endothelial lining. Intranodal vessels contain littoral cells and are histiocytes with phagocytic property. The capsule is usually thin. They may be thicker at the hilus, connected to the fibrous tubercle which penetrate the lymph node. In a high-grade lymphoma, you see a thinner capsule as compared to a low-grade lymphomas. And in metastases, the capsules are usually thicker. In chronic lymphadenitis, you see a thick capsule. Wherever there is more time for the tissue to react, you see fibrous reaction. Cortex is the subcapsular portion of the node with the largest number of primary or secondary follicle. What is a primary follicle? It is a round aggregate of small, uniformly dark staining, naive cells which are inactive and not exposed to the lymph node, to the antigen, usually near the capsule within the network of follicular dendritic cell processes. No germinal center present. Once you see the germinal center, that becomes a reactive follicle or a secondary follicle. It arises from the primary follicle that develops a germinal center due to antigenic stimulation of the B cells present and production of antibodies. Contains pale staining germinal centers which may be polarized towards the site of antigenic entry, and they're surrounded by mantle, and mantle is further surrounded by the marginal zones. So when you're saying a tumor has a germinal center derivation, that means they are not gone outside of the follicles. A tumor has a mantle zone derivation, that means it is not CD10 positive. It is marginal zone, it is not CD10 positive, because CD10 is the marker for germinal center derivation, and they are activated. The cells in the germinal center, they're activated, but they haven't gone out of the premises of the lymphoid follicles into the paracortex to become activated B cell-like phenotype or having a plasmablastic differentiation, not exactly plasma cellular. So they are plasmablastic in differentiation. So they, in addition to CD20, they express MUM1 and they lack CD10. So when they become activated, they start losing out or shedding out the CD10, which is the native marker before they start escaping out of the germinal center, and they acquire a MUM1, which is a marker of plasmablast. Then germinal centers, they contain predominantly B lymphocytes, which includes the centroblast and the centrocyte, and scattered follicular T helper cells and T regulator cells. Also, you see T regulators are basically the memory cells, and also see the tingible body macrophages and follicular dendritic cells. The mantle zone is a tightly packed small B lymphocytes, and mantle zone lymphocytes are basically not smooth contoured lymphocytes. Mantle cell lymphoma, you say, this is a small cleaved cell lymphoma. So you see cleaving and notching of the mantle cell lymphocyte. You see two types of lymphocytes in the mantle cell. You have small, smooth contoured, regular enveloped lymphocyte without any notches or indentation, or you see cells with indentation. So we have small cleaved as well as small non-cleaved cells. Primarily, the small non-cleaved cells are present in the germinal, where you see Burkitt lymphoma. The Burkitt cells are CD10 positive. They have a smooth contoured outline and they do not show cleaving or clepting. So that is a small non-cleaved cell. Follicular center cells do have cleaves. So every cell which is CD10 positive is not non-cleaved. They can be cleaved, can be non-cleaved. So I have a beautiful picture later on to show the ontogeny. Then marginal zone, they're less than the B lymphocyte, they're more rarefied, they have more cytoplasm. So you have a pale center, then a rim of dark cell, then again the rim of paler looking cell with more cytoplasm. It is lighter than the mantle zone, and it contains a mix of post-follicular memory B cell derived from stimulation of circulating T cells, which are T cell dependent, which are basically CD4, macrophage, MHC class 2, then B cell dependent cells, and they're often not well developed in the lymph nodes which are not exposed to antigenic stimulation. What is the paracortex? The tissue in between the follicles, and classically between the cortical follicles and the medulla. It contains predominantly dark staining mature T cells, B immunoblasts. Immunoblasts are not present in the center. Immunoblasts can colonize the center, but they are not an inhabitant of the follicular centers. Then interdigitating dendritic cells. When we talk about the dendritic cell sarcomas and the follicular dendritic cell tumor, there are 4 types. So this is one of the cells, interdigitating dendritic cells, which are present in the paracortex. Then plasmacytoid dendritic cell, histiocytes, and high endothelial venule. What are high endothelial venule? As the name suggests, they have endothelium which looks like epithelial cells. So these are post-capillary venules which are lined by, and where does these venules come from? The vein which is draining the lymph node. And they're lined by plump endothelial cells, and that express leukocyte adhesion molecules and contain intraluminal lymphocytes. So anywhere you see there is a viral reinfection or a tumor is draining a tumor, a lymph node is draining a tumor, you see there is a lot of proliferation of the paracortex or T zone hyperplasia. Follicle is a B zone hyperplasia, paracortex is a T zone hyperplasia. There is reactive prominence of post capillary venules, and classically in T cell neoplasm or T cell lymphomas you see prominence of the post capillary venules, because these venules, these endothelial cells, they express leukocyte adhesion molecule in response to the growth factors produced by the T cells, and they contain, which is basically interleukin 2, 4, 6, 8, and 13, and they contain intraluminal lymphocytes. They expand during cell-mediated immune response, and they have a coarse network of reticulin fibers. And what is a medulla? Medulla is a portion of the node closest to the hilum. It contains medullary cords, which is rich in plasma cells. Why the plasma cells are there? Because the plasma cells are going to eventually pour the immunoglobulin, which will get into the bloodstream. Sinuses and the vessels, but minimal number of follicles. The medullary cells, as I said, they have plasmacytoid lymphocyte, plasmablast, and plasma cells. The sinuses, they carry the lymph from the afferent to the efferent lymphatics. They start from the subcapsule, they end at the medulla, and other vessels are present in the hilum. What are the cells? What is a centrocyte? Centrocyte is a large cell, and it can be a small cell. So centrocyte can be a small cell or a large cell which is cleaved. Cleaving means there is irregularity or notching of the nuclear envelope. These are B cells with scant cytoplasm and inconspicuous nuclei. The name is site, it's not a blast. So it has a cell which has cleaving clepting. It is not smooth contoured, large or small, inconspicuous nuclei which is not visible, and scant cytoplasm. What is a centroblast? Centroblast, just remember, centroblast, immunoblast. Immunoblast has a central nucleolus, whereas centroblast has a peripheral nucleolus. Immunoblast nuclei are usually one or maximally two. A centroblast nuclei are usually multiple, or they are usually single, but they can have multiple peripheral nuclei which are touching the nuclear membrane. They are non-cleaved cells, and they are non-cleaved follicular center cells with moderate amount of basophilic cytoplasm, large round nuclei, open chromatin, and multiple peripheral nuclei. They frequently show mitotic figures. What is immunoblast? They are large cells scattered throughout the paracortex. Immunoblast, I say they are not, these two are the cells of the follicular center, centroblast and centrocyte. We do a centroblast count when we are grading a follicular lymphoma. So there is both proliferation of centroblast and centrocyte in the process, maybe neoplastic, maybe non-neoplastic, where it involves the follicular center or the B zone thing. Immunoblast can be T immunoblast or B lymphoimmunoblast. They're saying B cells, but they can be T immunoblasts as well, and they're scattered throughout the paracortex. They have single prominent nucleoli centrally located, and there is no cleaving and clipping of the nuclear membrane usually. But centroblast also non-cleaved. Centrocytes can be large or small, but they are cleaved cells, and the nucleoli is not prominent. Immunoblast is a cell which is between a small B cell and the plasma cell. They express CD marker, B cell marker like CD20, 79A, and the nuclear PAX5. And PAX5, believe me, is the best B cell marker. If you see a strong, bright positivity for PAX5, that becomes a CD, is a B cell. In which condition we see dim or barely perceptible positivity for PAX5 in the lymph node? Question. In which normally B cells, they are strongly PAX5 positive, nuclear positivity. In which condition PAX5 is weak or it's not a B cell? So those cells express PAX5 but in a very barely perceptible or weak manner. What is that condition? Anyone? In classical Hodgkin lymphoma, the Ristenberg cell and its variants are weak and barely perceptible positive for PAX5. Then plasma cells. Yeah, plasma cells. So if anybody will ask you what is the best marker for CHL or to differentiate classical Hodgkin from a high-grade B-cell lymphoma or a B-cell lymphoma, your answer should be PAX5, because you are comparing a tumor cell which is weakly positive by the negative staining or weak staining against a background of non-neoplastic bystander cells which are strongly positive for that marker. Then abundant basophilic cytoplasm in the plasma cells. They have perinuclear halo and clock phase chromatin. The halo is by Golgi apparatus, and they have a lot of RER and ribosomes, so they're basophilic. And they have Russell bodies, which is intracytoplasmic, immunoglobulins, which are PS positive globules. Then B cells. So there is, how do they mature? There is progressive maturation of the hemopoietic stem cells through several processes, ultimately giving rise to mature B cells which are reactive against non-self antigen. They develop from the stem cells of the yolk sac, fetal liver, spleen, and the bone marrow, and they complete their development within the B cells. In contrast to T cells, they mature within the thymus. In the B cells, they complete their development within the bone marrow. In the intersinusoidal part of the bone marrow, you see these are present in the intersinusoidal part of the bone marrow, and they mature into pro and the pre B cell, and they get out of the bone marrow, come to the space organs or to the lymph node where they harbor, and finally develop into the reactive phenotype of the B cell. So a few things is a very wordy side. I'm not going to go over it. The B cells, they express a B cell lymphoma, the normal B, the B cells, they express surface immunoglobulin. Suppose we are thinking about a B cell lymphoma, we look for immunoglobulin gene rearrangement, because to prove clonality, it is a monoclonal B cell population or a polyclonal B cell lymphoma. And as you know, the immunoglobulins have 2 heavy chain and 2 light chains. The heavy chains are encoded by the 14th chromosome and the kappa and lambda by 2nd and the 22nd chromosome, the light chains. So we have different permutation and combinations. To do that, we have a variable region of the gene diversity in the joining region. I have a picture for that. So just to remember, early B cells are the precursors. They are TDT positive, the early B cell. TDT is not something which is just for T cell or the T lymphoblast. Even the early B cell precursors, that good nuclear positivity for TDT, they are CD34 positive, they are positive for HLA-DR. Subsequently, they undergo a heavy chain rearrangement first, followed by the light chain, which are CD19. So the first marker to appear is CD19. The blastoid neoplasms like ALL, BALL, they are CD19 positive. The mature B cell neoplasms are CD20 positive. So 19, then comes 22, then comes 20. So 20 is the last marker to come in the process of T cell ontogeny. 19 acquires 10 alongside, but when it becomes mature, they lose 10. That is the beauty. So it's similarly in the follicle, you see the follicular center is 10 positive. As they get out of the follicle to the mantle and the marginal zone, they start losing the 10. So 10, 19, TDT, 34, HLA-DR, those are 117, those are immature markers. They are not the markers of mature neoplasms. They can be present in mature if they show a blastoid phenotype, but in the non-blastoid mature neoplasms, like in CLL, SLL, they are not expressed. Then when then they start expressing IgM and D, followed by IgG, then adds the CD21 and 22, and TDT becomes 0. So a mature B cell do not have TDT. They are positive for 20 and 22 and low level of expression of CD19 and CD10. Early precursor cells, again to summarize, TDT34, HLA-DR positive with 10, and with interaction, the rest of the thing drops down, they become the plasma cells. So this is like a body, I'm not going to go over it. In the lymphoma class, I will tell you this with pictures. So this is just to recap. Pre-B cell, 19 positive, 38, 40, and 20 positive. Immature B cell, 19, 20, 40. Mature, 90. The main is 20 here. Forget about others. Memory B cells is again the same as the mature B cell, expressing all these things. When they become plasma cells, they start losing their 20 and 19, acquire MOM1, CD38, and CD56. T cells, they develop from the bone marrow, become prothymocytes, and then migrate to the thymus gland, where they self-recognize the T cells are eliminated and they become mature. T cell receptors is the key to the T cell development and function. They're either alpha beta or gamma delta. Alpha beta is about 95% and gamma delta is 5%. The T cells, they migrate to the thymus. They develop in the thymus. The B cell, the majority of the development of the B cell, they happen within the bone marrow. They come to different organ to attack. They're trained in the bone marrow. They get further training in the academies, like in lymph nodes and the organs. Whereas T cells, they're completely naive. The half of the they are like double positive. So they come to the thymus, where they undergo highly specialized ordered developmental program by the signals within the thymic milieu to become the mature T cells. The immature thymocytes are CD4 and CD8 negative, the double negative. They're divided into 4 stages, like CD44. CD44 is again one of the primitive marker, 25. So they become DN1, which is 44 positive, which is the oldest one, to 25 negative. Then they become double positive for 44 and 25. Then they lose out the 44, which is the immature bad marker, acquire more mature marker, which is 25, and finally they become negative. So in the double negative phenotype, this is why it is important. When you have a thymic lymphoma, because TDT is going to be positive in a primary thymic lymphoma, in a thymoma, and in a T lymphoblastic lymphoma. So TDT is not going to help you. TDT is only going to tell you these are immature thymic cells. Suppose you have marker like 44 and 25, which are CD25 is what? CD25 is basically the receptor for Epstein-Barr virus. So if you have 25 and 44, those are available, and 44 is actually first described in the setting of urothelial dysplasia and small cell carcinoma, but later on people used it in glial tumors and in the ontogeny to study the ontogeny of B cells. So classically in the double negative phenotype, if you really want to know what kind of T cells these are, the pro T cells or pre T cells, if they are like completely negative for both 4 and 8, then they're further subdivided from immature to mature phenotype are 44 positive, 25 negative, 44, 25 both positive, then they're losing out the 44, 25 is still there, then lost both, and they're trying to be positive. So the precursor cells in the T cell ontogeny are TDT positive like B cell, and 34, and what's the big deal? They're going to be positive for both. Then they drops HLA-DR, they start adding 2, 5, and 7, which are the early thymocyte. While undergoing gamma and beta gene rearrangement, they add CD1 and drop CD34. Now they become a double negative phenotype, which has lost CD34, and they have 2, 5, and 7 as an evidence of early thymocyte. Then they start adding both 4 and 8 at one go, so becomes a double positive. Then they segregate into either a 8 positive cells or a 4 positive cell. So finally, we have a cell without TDT, CD1, CD5, and 7, but they are either 4 positive or 8 negative. What is common in those cells? They are CD2 and 3 positive, and 3 is the pan T cell marker. And NK cell and T cells, they arise from this common progenitor that express CD3 epsilon and cannot develop into B cells. So like the B cell and T cell, all at a premature cell, TDT, 34, and HLA-D are positive. B cell, they come through the 19, 22, and 20 pathway. T cells, from a double negative to double positive to a single positive phenotype, keeping the 2 and 3, losing out TDT, 1, 5, and 7. So this is the picture. Double negative, DN3, DN1, DN2, DN3, DN4, double positive, then 1. And these factors, they facilitate. What is important here? You have a TH1 cell or TH2 cell, CD4 or CD8 positive. Important is GATA3 is a transcriptional regulator for TH2 cells, the helper type 2 cells. So you see in a normal lymph node, if you do GATA3, you see the cells which are present in the interfollicular or the corticomedullary area and the paracortex, they're classically positive for GATA3, whereas if you look into the follicular centers, the GATA3 positivity is usually minimal or nil. Because the helper cells which are out of the antigenic stimulus through the real action of T cells, the helper T cells are positive for GATA3. So this is the fat, the capsule, and these are the follicles, and this is the mantle, and surrounding the mantle we have a pale area which is the marginal zone, and this is predominantly the area of T zone here, 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 and these are the medullary cords. So we'll go closure. What are the variation? Lymph node histology is dynamic because of follicles. In the absence of immune response, they have primary follicle. With immune response, they have the follicular centers containing the histiocytes or the macrophages. They have some sprinkling of T cells, centrocytes, and what else? Small and large cleaved cells, which are basically centrocytes, and the centroblast. Immunoblasts are not present. So what is lymphocyte homing? After initial maturation in the primary immune organ, virgin B and the T lymphocytes, they go to the peripheral blood, home to the specific site within the lymph node, which is the other secondary organ. The sites of B cell homing include the the primary and the secondary follicles of the cortex of the lymph node, where they undergo antigenic presentation, processing, proliferation, and differentiation to a plasma cell, which finally harbor the medullary cords and get out of the lymph nodes to form the real action through the efferent lymphatics. The primary site of T cell homing is the paracortex. The separation of B and T cell lymphocytes are not absolute, because you see the center has some T cells. Both and normal T cells are positive for BCL2, and normal B cells are positive for BCL2. They are negative for BCL2. They are positive for BCL6. BCL6 doesn't stain the T cells. Both cell types present throughout the lymph node, necessary for coordinated lymphoid immune response. Lymphocyte recirculation. Normal lymphocytes, they recirculate, passing from the bloodstream to the lymph nodes to the efferent lymphatics, and allows constant surveillance for the presence. They kind of have a check on they're like check posts for the antigens. If antigen is not present, they leave the node and recirculate. The virgin lymphocytes have a finite lifespan, numbered in weeks, unless they come in contact with the antigen and have a chance to proliferate. What are the cells in the lymph node? A normal or a reactive lymph node is a dynamic organ, thus composed of transient B and T lymphocyte, antigen processing and presenting cells, replicating B or T lymphocyte, and persistent transient effector cells with the plasmablast of the plasma cells. Some of the functional subgroups are cytologically unique, others are cytologically indistinguishable. It is not very easy to differentiate everything. It's very easy to say in histology what is the centroblast or centrocyte, but it's difficult to really pinpoint those cells. Ultimate is the microscopic impression. When people say lymphoma is a diagnosis of IHC, I do agree. It is important. But if your morphology is not good, you do not have a thin 3 micron section of a lymph node. Trust me, if you have a 5 micron section of lymph node, you lose out everything. You need to have a 3 to 4 micron, maximum 4 micron thin section of a lymph node. And the lymph node, when you get it, it has to be fixed in formalin for at least 6 hours. And when you cut the lymph node, I normally cut the lymph node perpendicular to the long axis, not parallel to the long axis. If I cut perpendicular to the long axis, the fixation is good. In a bigger lymph node, if I have a small sub-centimeter lymph node or up to 2 centimeter, I kind of give a parallel size to the long axis and cut it into multiple pieces. I mean, they're like all thin slices, so the fixation will be good and you'll get a better section. And you can see the cells, the chromatin. And they show a lot of cytologic and immunohistochemical, immunocytological heterogeneity and organization. The cell type, small lymphocytes. These cells actually do not have nucleoli. You can say these are nucleolated cells. No, these are clumped chromocenters within the nucleus of the lymphocyte. The small dark blue dots, which are the chromatins or the heterochromatin clumping within the cells. And they can be B cells, T cells, virgin, unexposed cells, and the most likely of any of the lineage, and they can be confirmed by IHC. Locations, you know, the B cells are primary follicles, mandrel zone, secondary follicle, medullary cord. T cells, germinal centers, and majority in the paracortex. Kinetically, the clump chromatin tells us the cells is not proliferating, not activated to enter the cell cycle and replicate. It's very important. In cell division, what happens? In mitosis, the chromatin, it opens up. But when a cell is not dividing, the chromatin is clumped. It is like in cytogenetics. When you look at the cells, we kind of culture the cells in conventional cytogenetics. The live cells we culture to make it replicate. And then we kind of arrest the cells at the metaphase by giving colchicine or colchicine. So how does that happen? That happens because in a naive cell which is not dividing or not activated, the chromatin is usually not thread-like. It is very condensed and present as clumps or line-like structures, which is happening in these cells, which gives a deceptive appearance of activated cells. In the replicating cells or the post-replicating B cells, the non-cleaved cells, small or large, and they're exposed to the antigen. They have a round nucleus, but larger than the resting lymphocytes, like here, small non-cleaved cell with small nucleolus, or the large non-cleaved. They become the large cleaved and the small cleaved. So this is the way: small non-cleaved to large cleaved, then the small cleaved. Small, large, large, small, and open vesicular chromatin. And they have recognizable nucleoli. The nucleus near are more than the genetic material, so they are more like opened up. And the small cleaved cells is the last cells, the non-replicating population, post-mitotic memory cells or the plasma cells. They have clumped chromatin, irregular folded and cleaved nuclear profiles. You see in the mantle zone. So centroblast, which is basically this one. This is a small mature lymphocyte. This is a centroblast. This is a mantle zone lymphocytes, and this is the large cleaved cell, which is again centrocyte. These two are the centrocytes. So this is the marginal zone, germinal center, and this is the again the periphery of the marginal. This is basically these small cells are the T cells, and these are centrocytes and centroblast. Again here. This is a centroblast. This is another centroblast where the nucleus is attached. There are multiple, and they're attached to the periphery, to the nuclear envelope, to the nuclear membrane. So you do see these kind of cells. So let's stay here for some time. This is a follicular center. This is a large cleaved cell. You see this indentation, multiple nucleoli. This is a large non-cleaved cell. A centroblast with the nucleoli condensed to the periphery with the clear chromatin in the center. Small cleaved cell, small cell cleaving, no nucleoli. This is again small cleaved. And this is the macrophage with the central nucleolus. Immunoblast, replicating large cells, we know what is it, nucleoli is present and they are not present within the center. Accessory cells, they're the antigen processing cells, which are different types, like interdigitating reticulum, around reticulum, it is interdigitating reticulum cell, follicular dendritic cell, and dendritic reticulum cells. They process and present the antigen. They're visible in the normal lymph node, invisible in the normal lymph node. If you do a CD23 and a CD21, you see the network or the felt work of the accessory cells. Macrophages are tangible body macrophages, the macrophages lining the medullary and the subcapsular sinuses. They have oval nucleus, single, small, usually central nucleolus, and pale cytoplasm. Normal maturation, we already read. For the normal maturation, there is a lot of antigenic stimulation, antigenic diversity, and antigenic recombination. So we'll see that. For the B cell, the diversity is based on the immunoglobulin gene permutation and combination. For the T cell, it is a heterodimeric combinations of alpha beta or gamma delta subsets. It all requires two major variables. One is a unique antigenic stimulus and recognition of the antigen, autocrine cell activation, paracrine activation through cell-to-cell communications. So this is for the T cell, B cell gene. So the B cell with the 14th chromosome with heavy chain, we have the 5' part of the gene and the 3'. This is variable diversity and the junctional component. The major change happens here to make this entire thing multiple, and you see multiple subsets. Suppose you have a B cell lymphoma, you see similar kind of thing by a PCR technique. If you really want to prove it is a follicular lymphoma versus a follicular hyperplasia, or it's a small benign lymphocytic proliferation versus a small cell lymphoma or a large cell lymphoma, you'd go for a B cell clonality study where you look, what you look there, you basically look into the clonality of the immunoglobulin gene, heavy chain, mostly the heavy chain. You look for immunoglobulin gene rearrangement. Is it isotypic or polytypic? It is polytypic, it is benign. If it is isotypic, it is malignant. Then surface antigen production will tell you it is a B cell process. And for T cell, again, you look for, this is the B cell. For T cell, we already discussed about this thing, and the diversity is all dependent on the VDJ of the alpha beta or gamma delta type of T cells. So in a small, very simplified picture, we have a pluripotent stem cell that becomes the lymphoid stem cell, which be either a pre-T or pre-B, and they give rise to small B lymphocytes and follicular center cells, and or small B lymphocyte becomes plasmacytoid B cells and plasma cells. And this T can be helper or suppressor or cytotoxic. And this is complicated when you deal about the lymphomas. We'll talk about it. These pluripotent cells from the bone marrow, they become T or B. The pre-B cell, at least at a little mature stage, they come into the bloodstream as the small mature lymphocytes or the large cells, and they go into the lymph node and the spleen. Whereas in T cell, they're very, very infantile when they come to the thymus.
Hello? 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 Yes, I can see your screen, but not hear you. Okay, you are online already. Well, friends, I think only one slide was left. So Sambit has given them the message of on WhatsApp that we are done for today. Thank you very much for joining in the first lecture. I think we can end it here. Or if in case anyone wants to say something, you can just raise your hands. Or you can give any feedback on the WhatsApp group. I'm ending it now.